Welcome to Real American Monsters.
Hello, 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 my friends in Monsterland. We are back finally in the studio. It is not snowing here in New England for a change. Oh my goodness, what a winter we have had, and I have had to cancel so many shows due to work. I couldn't even tell you how many hours I worked this winter. It's been crazy, crazy, crazy. But finally, we are here tonight, and we are live, and we are at the helm, and we are in control for the next 90 minutes. And tonight, we have two great guests tonight for you, and they're brothers even. And this is the first time they've ever done an interview together live. And we have them both here. We have Mr. Frank and Al, the Squatchfather Santariga, with us tonight. I'm so excited. I know you guys heard I've had Frank on the show, I've had Al on the show, but we have all new stuff to touch base on tonight. They went back in back in history and back in talking to their sister and all these new stories and new interactions they have. And Frank has remembered some from the past, and Al has remembered some from the past. And there's one really cool one from the old country in Italy that brought the Santariga family actually here to America. So I'm looking forward to hearing that live for the first time ever. And I'm very excited to have them here with us. Next week, we have the guys from the Cells will be with us back for the 40th time that we tried to schedule them, and will be back with us next Tuesday night. So hello, one and all. Mr. Chris Calabrese is with us. Good evening, Chris. And Diane Fowler is with us, of course. And Mary Jo. Good evening, Mary Jo. And Blue Eyed Northern is with us. Kim Kincaid. Good evening, Kim. Everybody's pouring in to see this show. I'm looking very forward to this. And I'm glad that you guys are all here with us tonight. I know there's a lot of controversy going on right now in the old Bigfoot world. And so we are going down into the paranormal side of things tonight and take a break from all that drama and all the stuff that's going on right now. And got two great guests. So without further ado, I got to play something for the boss, and then we're going to get our guests out here. Ladies and gentlemen, Al and Frank, the Santariga brothers.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, Chris.
Hello, fellas. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
I want to say a big thank you for taking the time and coming here on a Tuesday night. I know it's early in the week, and we're just getting going with the week, and I really appreciate having you guys here. And I'm very excited for tonight's show because you guys have a lot of firsts for a lot of people, and you guys being here doing a live is your first ever broadcast, I believe, correct?
Together. Yep.
Together. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I ran this by Al a little while ago about getting you both on the program, and now you guys are here, and so I'm excited. So before we go any further, I know a little bit about you, and I'm sure some of the folks in the audience know a little bit about you, but you want to just give everybody just a quick bio before we get started, and we'll let Frank go first.
Well, I'm a parapsychologist, retired. I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and now I'm just pretty much out of the picture. Every once in a while, I get a call from people asking for a little help or suggestions or an idea of things. But I'm pretty much retired out of it now. I've done my share.
Okay. How about you, Al? I want to give everybody a quick little bio about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows who I am. You know what I mean? My mom was had a psychic ability, and like I said, my brother was a parapsychologist. He had every book under the sun about animal ghosts and aliens and everything. So when he was finished reading them, I would always read them, and I followed in his footsteps, and here we are.
Awesome. So you guys have a rich family history with the high strangeness. I mean, it begins with your mama, or it's even probably before your mama, um, and it's continued throughout the ages, and kind of just reminds you of an old horror movie. You know, you see these people that have been around for years and years and years, and the legends come up, and then all this stuff happens. But this is real life, and this is really happening, and folks need to realize that this stuff is real, and you just don't come about it. Let's start off with your mother. Let's start off about how you guys learned that your mother was a psychic growing up, or how was it to live in the household, or let's just start it off at a young age and how you grew up with all this going on.
Well, I could tell you that I didn't find out till well in my teens that my mom did have psychic abilities. Only found out when she had her major migraine headaches. You knew that something was coming down the pike. Something was going to happen. She would have headaches feel like people are sick. The first time I noticed it, though, was back in 1963. Um, in the village where my mother grew up, they had a major dam collapse. And it was going towards her father's house in Italy. This happened in Italy. It was a major dam collapse. And at the time of that collapse, now we're here living in Yonkers, in New York, and she felt sick that night. And I remember saying that she wanted to go to bed early. She felt very, very sick. And then the next morning, we get a call from my aunt in Italy saying that about the disaster. But thank God, my grandfather survived it. The water came right up to his window, and he was able to survive it. But that's when I first noticed that she has some kind of a psychic ability. So back in 1963.
How about you, Al? When did you start realizing that what was going on in the home?
Oh man, I had to be 10ish, and I would hear my mother talking at night to people. You know, my father would make her sleep in another room because she would talk all night because he had to get up to go to work and do construction. And I would hear her talking and, in Italian, having full blown conversations. And I'd be like, who the hell is she talking to? You know what I mean? I was like, it wasn't, I thought she was dreaming, but it was like every night she would have these long conversations. And she would say that she would always be exhausted in the morning. And she would say, yeah, well, all night long people would come to me and talk to me and come see me or whatever. And I would be like, that's crazy. I don't want anybody coming to see me in my room, you know. But that's when I first realized that mom had abilities. I thought she slept in a different room because my father snored so loud. I didn't know it was the other way around.
Right. Did she talk to you guys about it? Did she fill you in on what it? Did she know when did she know all along, or did she try to keep it from either of you at a young age?
Well, she kept it from me, that's for sure. Yeah. I had to get everything out of her when I was writing my book. I had to actually ask her for all these things. She wasn't willing to just give it up for me.
Yeah, no, I mean we never really had long conversations about it. She didn't want to discuss it because my father didn't believe in anything, and if she had to talk about it in front of him, it was rough in my house. You know what I mean? So she just didn't want to discuss it. Especially in front of him.
Right. When did you guys start hearing all the stories of the stuff that she started? That you started hearing what she was capable of, and the interactions that she was having. When did you guys start learning about that?
Well, like I said, it was probably right at the time I'm starting to write my book. I mean, I've heard it from everyone else in the family. Everyone else in the family had this ability to some kind of psychic ability, and they would tell me their stories and of what they experienced. But as for my mother herself, she wouldn't say anything. Like I said, I had to drill it out of her every time.
I would hear it. I would hear it when it happened, like when she had an experience, like of something. If she had a premonition and something happened, then I would hear about it. That through the family grapevine, that that my mother's name was Bruna. That Bruna had this premonition, and then this happened. And that's how I heard about it, through the grapevine.
So what's the first one you guys heard? I'll let you tell an incident that was the first time that you heard of something extraordinary that she did with her abilities.
Well, like I said, back when they had that dam disaster in Italy, that was the first time I've heard of it. But after then, things cooled off. Again, by then I was out of the house. I was about 18, 19 years old. I was out of the house by that time and married. And I didn't know what was going on. I was like left out at that point. I didn't get back to talk about these things until I started getting interested in the paranormal. And what got me interested in the paranormal is I love mysteries, and I love to find out what makes things tick. And I thought there was always something to it, because there's so many people that experience these things. It's just not everybody could be crazy. So I got into it that way. I got to find out what's going on. And little by little, I got more and more deep into it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go full blown. So I got into touch with this institute out in California that did parapsychology. So I enrolled in their classes, and I went there for about a year and a half, got my certification, and I was given to a person named Jim McDonald. He was like my tutor after the indoctrination into the paranormal, and he lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, which was great because at that time I lived in Norwalk, Connecticut. So he was a close by guy, and I would go with him on a couple of the investigations and do research with him. Mostly, though, he did was UFO. He did a lot of UFO work, but we did have a person who helped us out when we went for some kind of a haunting or that type of thing. A woman in New York City, she would come up and help us out. She was a psychic, and she did really good work. And that's how I got my experience into the paranormal, through him.
Okay, can you share something that a story about your mom that you when you first you just said, hey,
Yeah,
wow.
you know what, Frank? I'll tell the Mary Baba story. You tell the Adriana story. Okay?
Yeah, whatever.
All right, so my mom was in Florida visiting my sister, living in Florida, and a friend of the family, this woman Mary, was down there visiting her sister as well. And she said, well, since we're both down here at the same time, we'll come over, we'll have coffee and cake tomorrow, yada, yada, yada. And during that night, my mother went to sleep. She seen Mary came to her in her vision, and she seen Mary's face, and Mary was saying goodbye, So when my mother got up, she said to my sister, I think you should call Mary, sister. I feel like something terrible happened because I seen Mary last night and she came by to say goodbye. And my sister called Mary's sister, and Mary's sister said, yeah, we won't be coming by today. Mary passed last night. And that was like one of my mother's premonitions.
Right. So she had them often too, right? That happened more than once. Her being able to sense that, and so
Yes.
how about you, Frank? What's
Well, I could continue on with premonitions that my mother had. Is when my cousin Adrian, she was about 24 years old. She was having problems with alcohol and drugs, and we were always worried about her, what was going on with her. But one day, my mother got up to go to work. She was a seamstress, and she was going to work, but she had a headache, and she didn't like that. To her, that's an omen. When she gets her headache, that was an omen. Something's bad. It's going to happen. So she did go to work, and while she was working, she felt a little dizzy, but she kept on doing what she had to do. In the meanwhile, my cousin Adrian had overdosed, and she passed away. So my aunt called my father at work and told him what had happened. So my dad said, okay, I'm going to go to pick up, my wife. He says, I'm going to go pick up my wife and let her know what happened. This way we all could get together. So on the way to work, what happened, my mother was working. It was close to lunchtime, and she got a real violent headache, and she actually passed out. She fell on the floor. And people were wondering what happened, so she says, I'm okay, everything. So she recovered. She tried to go back to work, but by that time, my father had come into the work where she was working. As she was there, my mother says, "Uh-oh, this is going to be bad news. I know it." So as my father approached her, she goes, "Don't tell me, Adriana is dead." And my dad said, "How did you know?" She goes, "When I went to get the other material out of my bin to start working, I saw her face as she was in a coffin." And that's when my mother passed out and everything. And then my dad was like, how the hell did you know that was going to happen? But that was she just would get these feelings, these headaches, and you knew something bad was going to happen. So she knew ahead of time that she had passed away.
Did she consider it a gift or something that she didn't want? How did she react to all this? How did she react to being able to tell this was going to happen and see faces of family members that are deceased? And did she think it as a gift or as a curse, or how did she live day to day with this?
Well, from what she told me, she never liked it because she was always, I think that's what brought on her anxieties and her headaches too. That this premonition or whatever's coming on to her, the psychability, she was afraid of it because it brought nothing but bad things. That was the problem. There was nothing good that ever came out of those premonitions. I don't know, maybe Al, she told you something good. I never heard of anything nice coming out of these things. But she pretty much, like I said, she kept it to herself. As far as I know, she always kept it to herself.
Now, did it always deal with death, or did it deal with other things other than seeing people that have passed?
Well, she most of the time it was death, but there was one occasion again. She was visiting my sister down in Florida. She was a snowbird. She would go to Florida in the winter, and she was sleeping in the spare room, and in the middle of the night, she seen like a light in the closet, and she was like, "What's going on? How did that light come on?" And then she said an angel came out of the closet, and there was a woman, all gold with golden light around her with golden hair, and she just looked at my mother and smiled, and passed on through the room, and I would, that was a good thing because she seen an angel. I don't know what that meant. She didn't get into it. She just got up in the morning and she told my sister, she says, an angel. She thought, maybe she was gonna die because she seen an angel, so she was scared. But it was just the strangest thing. And other people have slept in that room and no one ever experienced anything paranormal but her.
Right. Now, her mother was a white witch. Is that correct?
No, that was my Aunt Adrian. She was a white witch.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my father's sister.
So that's. Do you know? That's weird. Do you think that your father was attracted to your mother due to his? It's in his family roots too. You know what I mean? It's. Do you think that? I mean, that's thinking way off the table. But hey, what do you guys think about that?
My father was a Don Juan. I don't think that was the reason.
And anyway, he was one of the greatest skeptics in the world.
Yeah,
he didn't believe in anything
even what Frank, tell the story about the ghost that ran through his engine block of his car, the Mustang.
I don't know about
Montauk.
that. I don't know about that.
Montauk.
Oh! You're talking about the Montauk incident.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I think Chris, I don't know if I mentioned it at the last time we had it, but I think I might have said it then. About my dad. He had the incident in Montauk, New York, when he went fishing with his friend.
Oh, the boat. Yes. That was a story.
Yes. And even after that, he said it was his imagination Meanwhile, his friend says, "You're crazy." He says, "I
Yeah.
seen that thing." And again, everybody in Montauk, it's a known thing in Montauk that area is haunted.
Oh,
So,
well, tell it again, Frank. Let the people that never heard it before. It's a great story. It really is.
okay, as it goes, it was I think I was either in January or February, many years ago. I think it was in the 70s. Him and his friend Angelo, and his friend Angelo, you got to figure this guy's like 6'2", right? He weighs about 250. He's a big guy. He was a Marine, and during World War II, and nothing phases him and anything. But anyway, the way the story happened is I happened to be sitting at the table doing my homework on parapsychology. And he says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, I'm doing, some homework. I'm studying." He says, "What are you studying?" And I told him parapsychology. He says, "Well, what the hell is that?" I says, "Well, it's about, I hate to say it, it's about ghosts and UFO, ghosts." And then he turned to my father. He says, "Fabio," that's my dad's name. He said, "Fabio, did you tell him about the one we saw?" And then my father said, "Come on, I don't want to hear this, baloney. I don't want to talk about it." Then my father lit a cigarette and went outside. But Angelo stayed with me and he told me the story, the way it happened. They went fishing. It was in the winter because they go for whiting fish. They're like small codfish off the coast of Montauk. So they were going fishing. It's in the middle of the winter again, and it's cold, and there's still snow on the ground and everything. And it's at night because that's when the fish are better catching at night. And they were fishing, and they've been there for about an hour, 2 hours, and they were starting to get cold. And they got their catch. They got plenty of fish. They had like 2 big 5-gallon cans full of fish. So they said, it's about time we go. Let's go. It's cold here. So as they started walking back, because they had to walk out to this pier. It's an abandoned World War II Coast Guard pier. All right, and they used to have one of those seaplanes, docked there. So it's an abandoned pier, hangar where the Coast Guard plane was. So after they've caught their fish, they're cold. They're heading back to the car. It's a probably maybe a couple of 100 yards to where the car was. So they're walking back, and they noticed the hangar, the old abandoned hangar where the Coast Guard used to keep their plane in there. They saw a light flickering on the window. Everything else is dark, pitch black, except for the flashlights they have in their hand as they're walking back to the car. But they see this light going on in the warehouse or the hangar. And as they're getting closer, it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And Angelo goes to my dad. He says, "Hey, I think that place is on fire." And my dad said, "It's probably a couple of bums, trying to keep warm. It's so damn cold." So they keep walking, and it's getting brighter. And now there may be, I don't know, I think he said he was like maybe 30 feet away from it. The hangar doors flip open, and now comes out a form. It's like a big flame, a form that comes out, and it blows up into a face and a body of a man. And as it gets right in front of Angela and my dad, it lets out this scream. And you got to admit, it's the middle of the night in the winter, and they hear this scream coming out. Angelo drops everything he had. He turns around, and he starts heading back towards the dock. My dad drops what he has, and he goes and he tackles Angelo before he falls into the water. He says, "What the hell are you doing?" He says, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" My father said, "It was just our imagination. Don't worry about it." So, and Angelo, from then, he was talking about how bad it was and everything. So they stopped on their way back home. They stop at a diner. There's a diner out there on the Montauk Highway. And they stopped there, and Angelo's shaking like a leaf, right? And it's like, right now it's maybe like 1 or 2 in the morning. He's shaking like a leaf, trying to drink a cup of coffee. And it's just then, my dad, the owner of the diner, and Angelo. That's the only 3 people in the diner. And the owner of the diner says, "What's the matter with you?" He says, "It looks like you saw a ghost." And Angelo looks up and said, "Yeah, I did see a ghost. I did see a ghost." And my dad says, "Shh, don't tell him that shit. Don't tell him that stuff." And then the diner guy goes, "Oh, you saw Montauk's ghost." He said, "What?" And then he went and told the whole story, how the ghost of Montauk is the famous thing out there. What had happened is that during World War II, that was an active base, an active Coast Guard base. And the sailor got leave to go, out. I think he lived in Brooklyn or Queens, and he got leave to go home. And I guess he didn't tell his wife that he was coming home. And I guess he got shocked when he opened the door and he saw his wife in bed with another guy. And I don't recall. I'm not sure if he did kill his wife and the guy. I'm not sure. I don't remember that well, but I have a feeling he did kill his wife and the guy, and then he took the train back to Montauk, climbed the rafters, put a rope around his neck, and hung himself. And supposedly every time he sees himself hanging, he screams and runs out the door, out the Montauk doors. And that's the story. And so Angelo said, I'm telling you that I saw that. But my dad, right to his dying, he said, that was just my imagination. I said, Dad, how could it be your imagination and not Angelo, who's right next to you? He said, no, it was just our imagination. And that's the way he was. Yeah, so there, that's the Montauk ghost out there.
Yeah, and
Supposedly,
I can validate that story because when Angelo would come over the house or we went over Angelo's house, I would always say, Ange, tell the story, tell the story. And
oh my
Angelo
God.
would get goosebumps
Yeah,
and tears in his eyes. Like, no, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about it. And my father would get mad, like, oh,
yeah,
leave him alone already with this nonsense. But
yeah.
Angelo would freak out. Yeah.
Yeah, that was to see it from a big guy like that who was a Marine during World War II. It's like, wow, that's something else.
Do you think your pop was more defensive towards you guys so you wouldn't see it and keep it away from you guys, but he knew it was real? Do you think he was that way towards it all?
Uh, I don't think my dad gave a crap either way. He didn't care. To him, it was nonsense. Even when I was doing the UFOs things and I was showing the proof of pictures, actual pictures of UFOs and things, he was that's baloney. So he wouldn't believe it. He just denied everything.
All right. Now you guys even had experiences together about UFOs. You guys have a UFO story that you both experienced at the same time, correct? If I remember. Right.
Yeah.
Let's just touch base on that for a couple minutes, and then we're going to go to the old country, and I want you guys to tell the story about the werewolf because I can't wait for people to
Yeah,
hear that.
I got one or two more things about my mom's
Oh,
premonitions.
okay, yeah, go
I was
ahead.
gonna,
Whatever, yeah. If you want to do them first, and then we'll do the
let's get
UFO
them
thing.
out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
when my mom was dying, she was in the hospital dying. The doctor called me up and said, "You better get your brother and your sister up here right away, because your mom's only got about a day to live." And it didn't make any sense to me because when I seen my mother in the emergency room, she was fine. So I says to her, the doctor says, so I called Frank and I called my sister Marilyn down in Florida. Now Frank's in Michigan and my sister's in Florida. So, and they're going to drive in. So it's going to take more than a day to get there. And I'm telling my mother, yeah, they're driving up and she goes, okay, no problem. And then one day I go to visit her and she gives me this story. She says, last night I had this Italian doctor come into this room, little Italian doctor come into this room, spoke perfect Italian, and he was showing me home movies of his family from northern Italy. And my mother was from northern Italy. And he said it reminded of me where I grew up. And she's telling me this story, how beautiful the movies were, the home movies and all of this stuff. So I said, okay, Mom. Now, my mother wasn't on any kind of hallucinatics. All she had really, they had her hooked up to was a little bit of oxygen. That was it. So I go out to the nurse's station and I was like, do you guys have an Italian doctor? I described him and they go, yeah, we got a doctor who looks like that doctor, whatever, DeMarco, whatever his name was. I said, was he in the building like last night? And she goes, why? I said, well, my mother said he came in and showed her home movies of Italy. And the nurse started laughing. She says, no, Dr. DeMarco is in Italy right now doing a seminar. I was like, okay, that was pretty strange. Because my mother described him to a T. You know what I mean? Because when I described him to the nurses, they were like, yeah, it's Dr. DeMarco. And he speaks fluent Italian. So I said, okay. And then my brother and sister finally got to the hospital, and everybody said their goodbyes. And I was sitting there, and she says to me, I want to tell you something. I said, what's that, Mom? And I'm laughing because she thinks, this oxygen that they got in her nose is keeping her alive. Like she's on life support. She's not on life support, you know. She's got this stupid little oxygen in her nose. She goes, Jesus came down last night to talk to me, and he told me that when it's my time to go, not to be afraid, because he's going to come and get me himself. So I was like, wow, Mom, okay, that's great. And she says, okay, I'm ready to go now. You could take the, unplug the oxygen. And I'm laughing because I know this oxygen isn't keeping her alive. And I go over and I unplug the oxygen. And 2 minutes later, she's out. And it looks like I've seen her a million times sleeping. I'm waiting for her to start snoring. And she's gone. Just like that. She's gone. And I called my brother and sister back into the room because they went out to get like lunch. And they were like, what do you mean she's gone? She says she was ready. I pulled the, somebody pulled the plug. I pulled the plug. But to have those two visions, to see this doctor, and I don't know who, I think this doctor was a guardian angel, and I think this guardian angel was showing her home movies of herself when she was small in northern Italy. That's just my take on it, you know what I mean? And then to have Jesus come down and tell you when you're ready to go, I'm going to come and get you. It didn't surprise me with my mother. Not at all. Did not surprise me.
She had some special abilities that, you know, and
Yeah, well, you know, to come to think of it, Al, when you mentioned about Mom's, when she was passing away, when my dad was passing away, he was in the bed, and I don't know if you remember this, but Al, but we were all around him, and he was in a, you know, pretty good mood and everything. He wasn't really that out of it at that time. And he goes to me, he says, oh, yeah, by the way, he said, Pete Santariga came by today. And Pete said that you're going to come with me tomorrow. We're going to go get a haircut. All right. And he says, all right, I'll go with you. I'll go with you tomorrow. And then we didn't say anything to my dad because Pete had passed away like a year before that. And he swore to God that Pete came in the room and told him, you're going to come with me. You're gonna come with him. We're gonna go get a haircut, and Pete did have passed away. So
I got something to add to that story too. The night my father was dying, my father was in bad shape from cancer. And the night he was dying, it was New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And my brother says, Al, go home. You've been here all day. I got this. I'll call you if Dad passes. And I was like, okay. And me and my wife, we went home. Now, we had 2 house parties we were supposed to go to that night. One at my cousin Dino's house and one at my brother-in-law Dan's house. And I told my wife, I said, yeah, I don't think we're going out tonight. I don't feel it in me, you know? I don't feel like seeing everybody being happy and all that stuff. I'm just not up to it. And she's like, yeah, of course, son, we don't have to go out. And we're sitting there watching TV. It's like 10 o'clock-ish, something like that. And I get a cold chill go up my body. And I close my eyes and I get a shiver. And in my eyes, I see my father at one of his favorite places that he loved more than anything. This place called Sprout Lake. We used to go to all the time on the weekend. When he was young and healthy, my father was built like a middleweight boxer. He was young and he was healthy and he was waving goodbye to me. And I turned to my wife and I said, my father just died. And she's like, what are you talking about? If your father just died, your brother would have called you. I said, babe, he just came by to say goodbye. My brother calls me a minute later and I pick up the phone and I go, yeah, I know, Frank. Daddy's gone. And he goes, how do you know? You're the first person I called. And I said, he came by to see me. And you said to me, I'm getting like mommy. You said.
I probably did say that, yeah.
Yeah, and that was incredible. That was just incredible.
Mm.
Oh, that's I don't even know where to go with that. You know what I mean? But I brought you guys on, and I don't want to change the subject or anything, but I just want to show folks that this stuff is real, and certain people possess it, and it revolves around their whole lives, their whole life. You know what I mean? And it started with you guys, with your mom at a young age, and you grew up and you grew older. And as time went by, you had more experiences, and then all of a sudden, your experience now, like Al just said, like he had that experience. Now you're experiencing the same things your mother are, and Frank became a parapsychologist, and he had amazing things happen throughout his life too. And it's just I call it the high strangeness, and it is encircled you guys through your whole lives, and I just wanted people to know that there are certain people out there that are meant to happen to. There are certain people, like people say, how could you see have three Sasquatch encounters, a dogman encounter, see four ghosts and a UFO, and how can you do all that? Well, there are certain people out there that have something inside of them, some kind of abilities, and it happened. So, again, I applaud you guys for coming out and sharing your stuff. And I just want people to know that there's people out there that are meant to experience this stuff, and you guys are a couple of them. So,
Well, it's like night and day. I mean, between my brother and I don't see anything. I have no psychic ability whatsoever. Nothing at all. But my brothers, he's completely different. My sister too. I mean, they have it. It just that part they have. I don't have it. I just don't have that kind of ability.
well, then how come you can't be a parapsychologist?
Well, I'm probably the world's biggest skeptic. Who knows? But I believe in it. I mean, I went through it. I went through it for, like I said, over 30 years. I've done this. The UFOs, NDEs, you name it. I've done them all. I've interviewed hundreds of people on this, and I believe it. I believe that there's something out there that's doing this. People have that ability. I never believed in like different dimensions and things like that, but I met people who are really smart, and they're telling me, hey, there is different dimensions. I got to believe them. They're truthful.
Frank, you've experienced a lot more than the average person. I mean, the Ouija board story is
Oh my God, yeah.
that was an incredible
Oh,
story.
Frank, tell him about the old man who knocked on the door.
with the
Norfolk.
that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. I first started. In fact, I was still studying for my parapsychology stuff. My wife, she used to go out to. It's called jazzercise. I guess it's some kind of an exercise type
remember
of thing
that, yeah.
that girls do. Well, she went with my sister-in-law and her. They went to go jazzercise, and I said, "Well, I'm going to stay home. I want to finish up some of my homework I got." So I was working on this stuff. I heard her knock on my screen door outside. I have a flight of stairs. I was living in a two-family house. We just found this apartment, and we were in a two-family house, and it was upstairs. And you had to go up a flight of wooden stairs from the back to get to the house. And I heard some knocking on my screen door, and I thought it was my wife, that she came back. Maybe she forgot something or whatever. So I opened up the door, and I see this older gentleman, pale looking, and he says, "Can I talk to you?" I says, "How can I help you?" He says, "You can help me." He says, "Can I come in?" I said, "Yeah, come on in." So I came in. He sat down next to me, next to my desk, and he says, "I need you to tell my wife I'm okay." I says, "Well, why don't you tell her yourself?" I said, "Where do you live?" He says, "Scribner Avenue," and he gave me the number on Scribner Avenue, which wasn't far from where I lived. He says, "I live off on Scribner Avenue." I says, "Okay." As he's talking to me, he's like looking through me, not even like eye to eye contact, but he's like looking through me. And I said, "Oh, what's wrong with this guy? Trying to smell alcohol on his breath or something?" Because I don't know this guy from Adam. He just came up the stairs. And so he says, "No, I need you to tell my wife that I'm okay." I said, "All right, I'll tell your wife you're okay." Okay. So, all right, I'll tell you. So and she gave me the address and everything, and that was fine. And I let him out the screen door, and I heard him going down my steps because there were wooden steps, right? And I went back to my desk. About a minute later, not even, I had this somebody walking up my steps again. I'm saying, "Oh, don't tell me this guy's back again." I opened up the door, and it's my wife. She said, "Oh, they canceled the exercise class." I says, "Oh, they did?" "Yeah." She goes, I said, "Did you see the guy who was walking down the steps?" She goes, "What guy?" I said, "Yeah, there's some guy just walking down the steps." "You didn't see him?" "He didn't come with a car because I didn't hear a car leave." She goes, "No, there was nobody there." So, all right, I let it go. And then I completely forgot about it. I got into my work. I started doing my homework and everything. But the next morning, it was a Saturday morning. I said, you know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to go by this house and see if is such an address of such a house. So I go on Scribner Avenue and I see the address. I see the number, and I knocked on the door. And I says, hello? I got a message from your husband. She goes, you do? I says, yeah. He says, he's okay. He just wants you to let you know he's okay. And she said to me, oh, I don't think so, sir. She says, my husband died 2 years ago. I'll tell you, the hair my neck stood up. I'm telling you, man. In my arms, I was almost shit my pants. I'll tell you when she said that to me.
Right. And you don't have any abilities, Frank. You don't.
No, but that scares the hell out of me more so.
They only come to talk to you because they want to come talk to you. I mean,
that was a real screwy time. I'm telling you, that was really scary. Yeah, that was scary.
That's not an everyday occurrence.
No, and like I said, I was just starting into parapsychology. It wasn't like I was into it and could, sort of address the situation and everything. No, it was like some guy just came to my door and knocked on the door. That's the way I thought of it.
Right.
It was weird, real weird.
You got one more about your mom, Al?
I got one about my brother-in-law down in Florida.
Okay.
My brother-in-law had a stroke and he was in really bad shape. And his son lived in New York. And his son called my sister and said, hey, I want to come down and visit my father. And she said, no. His name was Anthony. She said, no, Anthony, he's not strong enough yet to have visitors. When he gets better, I'll give you a call and I'll let you know when you can come down. So he says, okay. And she hangs up the phone. And the next morning, her husband wakes up, and she takes him outside in the kitchen to make him some breakfast. And he said, he goes, Marilyn, I had the craziest dream last night. And she says, what's that, Joe? And she said, Anthony came to visit me. And he just wanted to say goodbye. And he was with somebody. And my sister said, well, who was he with? And she said, somebody looked like the Grim Reaper.
Oh, boy.
And she goes, what do you mean the Grim Reaper? She said, yeah, the Grim Reaper was standing behind him. And I asked him, Anthony, who's this? And he said, oh, don't worry about it, Dad. He's with me. And then my sister called New York to talk to Anthony, and Anthony had passed away that night.
Wow.
Is that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
So we tried to get your sister on the show here.
Yes, we tried to get my sister on the show.
And she wasn't going to come on. I do have a picture to share, but you have quite the story that she was involved in like a car accident, and it was actually
near-death experience.
Near-death experience, and she was actually, I think, after I heard it, that it sounded like she was saved by her guardian angel, and pretty incredible. I want to show everybody her picture because we have it. Let's see, share screen. Screen one, is it? Yep. Here we go. And there she is. There is Marilyn.
Marilyn. All right. So I got to read it because a lot of stuff happened here. So the year was 1980. The vehicle she was driving was a 1978 station wagon. It was down in Florida. It was on Route 27, Central Florida. The time of day was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was the weekend. It was Easter weekend. And my sister was always had a fear of ending up in the canal. For some reason, I don't know if it was an intuition or what, but she always had a fear about it. So she took a class how to survive that accident at the local library, and they taught her how to, what to do in certain situations and how not to panic and all of that stuff. So one day she's coming back from Central Florida with her girlfriend, and they're driving back. They're driving south, and on their side of the road is nothing but what'd she say? Not cornfields. Sugarcane fields. On the other side is this giant canal, a really big canal, really deep canal. Well, she's letting her girlfriend drive because she's tired, and She's falling asleep, and all of a sudden she feels the car starting to go all over the place, and she sees this giant truck cut her off, cut their car off, and the girl driving panics, and the car is going back and forth. It does a 360 in the middle of the road, and instead of hitting the brakes, the girl panicked and hit the ignition, hit the accelerator, and the car took off across a medium. And when it came off the other side of the medium, it actually went airborne. And there was like oncoming traffic. It went airborne over a guardrail and in the middle of the canal. It landed right in the middle of the canal, nose first. Now, my sister wasn't wearing a seatbelt because, you know, this is the 70s, right? The 1980s. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. There was no airbags in the car. She doesn't know how she didn't get hurt. She sees what's going on, and she said time slows down. The girl driving the car is frozen, holding the steering wheel. My sister's shoes came off during the accident. She stopped to put her shoes back on. She took off all her jewelry, put it in her pockets, got her purse, put it around her neck, and when the car hit the water, because it was a station wagon, the back seat came down. So she told her girlfriend, listen, we gotta go. She pressed the buttons. Now the class she took was for cars with roll-up windows, but her car had power everything. So she hit the button for the windows to come down, and the windows wouldn't come down. She hit the button for the doors to unlock, and the doors wouldn't unlock. So she's like, all right, don't panic. And meanwhile, the car is going down under the water, and she hits the button for the back window and the back tailpiece. And the tailgate goes down and the window opens up. So she grabs the girlfriend and she says, come on, we have to go. The car is going down. And she drags her girlfriend to the back of the car. And she looks around for alligators and water moccasins, snakes. Because these canals are filled with alligators and snakes down in South Florida and Central Florida. And she jumps in the water and she swims to the grass. And when she gets to the grass, the cars that were driving north seen her car come flying over the grass and into the water. So everybody started to stop. So one guy went down and helped her up and said, are you okay? She said, I'm okay. But her girlfriend wouldn't jump out of the car. So this guy ran back down, jumped in the water, swam over the car, pulled her girlfriend out, dragged her back up. Now they're both sitting on the guardrail. My sister takes off her scarf that she's wearing and ties it to the guardrail. And the guy says, what are you doing that for? And she says, so I could tell the insurance company where the car is. And the guy's like, let me take you to the hospital. And she's like, no, if I go to the hospital, I got to go north. I want to go south. I live south. I live in Fort Lauderdale. I got to go south. And the guy's like, you can't go south. You can't walk. How are you going to get there? She's like, I'm going to walk. He goes, you can't walk. It's 70 miles from here. How are you going to walk all the way down to Fort Lauderdale from where you are? And she says, no, I'm walking. And she grabbed her girlfriend and they crossed over to the other side, the southbound side, and she started walking down the parkway. And she gets a couple hundred yards down the parkway and she sees a guy parked on the grass with a brand spanking new truck. Brand spanking new. And she asks him, she goes, are you broken down? He says, no, I'm okay. I just wanted to stop for a second to catch a breather. And she's like, well, we're going to Fort Lauderdale. Where are you going? And the guy says, well, I'm going to Miami. She goes, well, I'll pay you to drive me back to my house. And the guy says, okay, I'll drive you back to the house. Now the cops pull up, and the cops are, taking her information, and it's taking the driver's information because they're getting into a car with somebody they don't know, and he doesn't want this guy to be a serial killer, right? So he checks on the guy. The guy's okay. He checks on her, and he tells her, he says, you don't know how lucky you are. She says, this year alone, 7 cars have gone into that canal. Not only haven't we been able to find the cars, we haven't been able to pull a body out of that canal. And she goes home. She calls the insurance company. The insurance company comes. They see the scarf on the guardrail. They know the location. The diver goes into the water, and the car is nowhere to be found. It's just gone. And if she didn't, if she said, I've never been so calm in my life. Oh, and before she dragged her girlfriend out of the car, because it was Easter Sunday weekend, she said a little prayer. All she wanted to do was get home to see her kids, you know? And she said, I always had a feeling that that was going to happen. I don't know why. I've always had that fear that it was going to happen. That's what made me take that stupid class. And I guess taking that class was enough to keep her calm through the whole situation. I like, who thinks like that? Let me take off my jewelry. Let me put my shoes back on. Let me get my pocketbook. I mean, everybody, you know, if that's me, I'm thinking, let me get the hell out of this car. Screw everything else, you know. But yeah, that was a pretty amazing thing. That and she didn't even tell my mother and father about it for like years, because my father would have got mad at her for letting someone else drive the car. And
Right.
they never found out who that guy was who dropped her off. He just kind of disappeared. Never heard from him again. He didn't take any money. He didn't want anything. And it's just sitting there on the side of the road in a brand new vehicle.
Yeah, that I just think that was guardian angel of some sort to
Yes, that's what
take
she
care of your
said. She
safety.
said, I think that guy was my guardian angel to be there. Because let's face it, who's walking 70 miles, you know what I mean, on the side of a parkway all the way from Central Florida to Fort Lauderdale? It's insane, you know?
Was she a sensitive too? Was she like your mom?
She was intuitive. Yeah, she would get gut feelings. She really was. I don't know if she had the premonitions my mom had, but she was definitely had gut feelings. She was definitely intuitive.
Right.
Yeah.
Frankie, you got your microphone blocked
Muted.
off. Muted.
Your microphone is muted.
You see the little microphone square near your picture?
How about now?
Yeah.
There you
good.
go.
Oh, okay. I must have hit it. I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
good.
okay.
So let's get to the werewolf thing now. We're
Benny's story, Frank.
yeah, we're
Okay.
already. So
That's all you.
this story, everybody, I heard today for the first time. Al just told it. I mean, right? This is the first time this is ever going to be told live, right?
I
Yeah.
don't think I ever talked. There's a lot of the stuff we're saying tonight we never discussed on radio before. No.
This is a very, very cool story. You want to listen to the whole thing. This is pretty. It's a pretty cool story. So go ahead, Brent.
Well, Al reminded me of it. I completely forgot about it, or else I would have put it in my book. But I completely forgot about this story. It's because it was told to me a long, long time ago. Just as I was starting to do my parapsychology stuff many years ago. It winds up being that my father's cousin, his name was Benny. We used to call him Benny. Him and his wife Helen happened to drop by to say hello to my mom and dad, and I happened to be at the house, and they're asking me how I'm doing, and everything, and then I was telling them about about my parapsychology stuff and all, and then that's when Helen, Benny's wife, said, "Benny, you should tell Frank the story about you when you were a boy in Italy. What had happened to you?" And Benny, I think he was reluctant to tell me about that. But he went ahead and said, okay, he says, I'll tell you. And he said to me that when he was about 12 years old, him and his brother, their job were to tend sheep and, go up to the pasture, put the sheep out there and just tend with them. And in the summer, they're out there all day and all night. So they had shifts. They had his brother would take one shift and then he would take the other shift. So this happened to be Benny's the second shift where he had to be overnight with the sheep. So he had his little lunch there, whatever you want to call a little lunch or dinner with it that he took with him. And he was just watching the sheep. It was starting to get dark. And he got up on top of a big rock so he could overlook the whole, all the flock to see where they were. And all of a sudden, the sheep were starting to get, a little nervous and starting to move around real quick. And so Benny at first thought it was his brother playing some kind of a joke or gag on the kid. What is he doing out there? But then he saw the sheep really starting to run around, so he stood up to see what it was. And from what he could tell, he saw a black head with two ears sticking up. And he said, well, it must be a wolf. So, I mean, that was his job. His job was to make sure to go out there and the sheep won't get hurt and kill the wolf. So he jumped down from the rock and he just ran through the flock and started swinging and started hitting this wolf many, many times. He hit him a lot of times. And then the wolf finally got up and started running. And as he was running on all fours, he got up and started running on two legs. And he ran into the rest of the woods. And he was, at first, Benny was, all his adrenaline was up. He didn't even think about what he saw. The guy get up on two legs and run. But anyway, he went back and he told his father, he stayed the rest of the night, minding the sheep like it was supposed to. The next morning, he went back and told his father what had happened. And him and his brother and his father went into town, told the constable. He got a few other guys, sheriffs around, to come around, take a look. And they saw the tracks. They saw the blood, that it had left the whatever it was, left the blood. And they followed the blood. They followed to a little cabin. And supposedly this guy, he was there like a recluse. He grew vegetables and things like that. Very rarely did he go into town. He was just like a recluse. But as they come to the cabin and they follow the blood, and it leads right to the cabin door, knocks on the door. And the guy opens the door, and he's all dressed up in bandages all over his head and his arm. He says, "What happened to you?" And he said, "The guy, I fell off the cliff the other day." He says, "I fell off the cliff." And he's looking at him, and he's looking at him, and he says, "This isn't right. There's something wrong here." And as they walk back, then Benny mentioned to the constable, says, "I could have swore that guy got on his 2 feet and ran. I could swear it was him because he's about the same height of the thing I saw run. I could swear it's him." And as they went back, they says, we'll let it go. We just let it go. But he swears to this day that it was a wolf. And by the way, that guy did move out about, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks later. They went to the cabin or something to see him or something, see how he was doing, being that he was so bandaged up. There was nobody there. He had left the cabin and he had left everything that was there. But he swears that he saw a wolf that he was swinging that club with. Again, this happened, I think, in the late 1920s when he was 12 years old, he said. So it was a long time ago. But it was common to see wolves up in the sheep up there. It was a common
not
thing.
running on two legs.
Well, no. I mean, but it was his job to go out there and kill it.
I get it, but
yeah.
I mean,
but it's also his job to track it. They know what a wolf track looks like. They know how to follow blood trails. That is their job, to protect them sheep. So when they're tracking something and they track it right to your front door and and they answer the door and you're all beat up.
Yeah, I did. I should have asked what did the tracks look like. I never bothered to ask him about how the tracks looked like. If there were paws or if there was actually a foot, something like that.
And then you also read a little bit, Frank, about the werewolves. Back in the times, it's a curse. It was a curse, and
right.
when they got caught, they would leave and they would hide again, and they would go try and find. It reminds me of like the old Hulk show. Bruce Banner would, or whatever his name was, would go to town once he got
right.
caught. That's what the old werewolf story said. They were cursed, so when they got caught, or led on to that they were there, they would move and go to another place because it wasn't on purpose. They were that way. They were cursed. And
I mean, he wasn't ridiculed. Nobody ridiculed the guy because it was like a known thing in that area that there were people cursed like that. So it wasn't something to be ridiculed about. Yeah, there were people that were supposedly the wolf man, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it was definitely. I remember my aunt Valeria telling me the story, and she said that when the constable went to the door, they were under the impression that the person who lived at the cottage had a wolf for a pet. So when the guy opened the door and he had the bandages on wrapped around his head, everybody that was in that hunting party just freaked out. You know what I mean? And just ran away because they said, "Oh, this guy's cursed," and
They might have,
and
yeah.
they just got out of Dodge. Like the whole posse just ran back to the village.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that story.
Yeah,
Completely.
that was
Or else I would have put it in the book.
that
I
was
would have put that
that
in
was
my
the
book.
only time I've ever heard a story like that in my life.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
it's it's truthful. It's what guy's telling the truth because you could tell by his eyes. He was still. I think I think Benny must have been about 60, 70 years old, at least 70 years old at the time, and you could see his eyes still wide open, saying that I could have been bitten to death by this thing. But thank God he kept swinging like crazy. And actually, it chased the thing away. That's great.
Well,
I,
why do you guys think your family? Why do you think your family's surrounded by this from way back in the early 19? Why do you think it is? What do you think it is about it?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I
well, your
mean,
guess is as good as mine.
Italians are very superstitious people, and I think that helps. It's sort of like a some sort of an attraction. That this type of thing, all these type of weird things, it just attracts them. That's my feeling. Yeah, it's really strange. Yeah.
What do you think, Al? Why do you think it surrounds your family?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's just I don't know if it's the bloodline. I don't know if it goes because our last name in Italian means holy line, and our family heritage goes back. Our Santariga is an original name of Rome, and we go back. We had family in the Roman Empire, was part of the Roman Empire. It's an old family lineage. You know what I mean? It goes back thousands of years. So I don't know what it's got to do with it. If that's got anything to do with it, your guess is as good as mine. I really don't know.
Your family could have started a boy band, back in with Dino and Fabio, and you guys had your own, had your
Marco,
and Marco. Yeah, you guys could have had your own Boys to Men or whatever the name
Franco,
was.
and Alfredo.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, sure.
So, other than the UFO, we'll get to that part. But anything other than UFO, have you guys ever experienced anything together, like anything paranormal in the same place, or any stuff like that ever?
We experienced stuff in the same house when Frank had his house in Bridgeport. I was living in the attic apartment, and I would hear stuff in crawling around in the crawl space all the time. And didn't the people who owned the house had children that were retarded, and they had them locked in that little room?
Well, I know they had one retarded. Yeah, one
Yeah, and
an adult. He wasn't a children. He was an adult.
they had
Yeah.
this little tiny room that I put my living room couch up against this little door because I would hear stuff walking around in there all the time, and I didn't want anything to do with it, and I had to sleep up there, and in that same house. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything in that house, but I know I experienced stuff in upstairs, and I know my mother and father lived in the basement. They had a basement apartment, and my father had a bar, and behind the bar he had a samurai sword and a German Luger he got during World War II. And one night they were sleeping and they heard people talking in different languages. And my father turned around and he looked, and there was a Japanese officer talking to a German officer behind the bar. And he turned to my mother and he says, "Do you see this?" Because my father didn't really experience paranormal stuff. So he thought he was dreaming. So he woke my mother up. He said, "Are you seeing this?" And she said, "Yeah, I see it, and because my father, because those two, the samurai swords got 150 notches on it. Okay, so whoever had that sword killed a lot of people. You know what I mean? And it must have had to been in the family forever. And the German Luger went back to, oh God, like the 1800s. Like 1889 or something. It was really really old and stuff. So I actually lent both of those pieces to the Paranormal Museum up at Pine Bush for the Pine Bush UFO Fair, and I had a picture of them on the bar and everything, and had the story written underneath it. They had it up there for a weekend or so, and so I don't know if you've ever experienced anything in that house, but I did, and Daddy and Mommy did.
No,
No,
I never did.
of course not.
No,
Oh, Frank got nothing to do with it. No.
I don't know. No,
But
no.
there's just one time when a whole bus full of ghosts pulled up to the front door and they were looking for stuff.
No.
Yeah,
So,
no.
before I know we'll get to the UFO, I got a couple more. Has your mom ever come to either of you since she's passed? Has she ever come back to check on you guys through dreams or in a vision, any of that?
No, I've never seen her or heard her. I believe I've felt her. Every psychic that I know, when I have conversations with them on the phone, always tell me the same thing. When my mother passed, she was very old. She was 92 years old, something like that. So she had gray hair and everything. And every psychic I know, when I talk to them, they tell me the same thing. Al, your grandmother is with you. She's your guardian angel. And I laugh because I know my mother was old when she passed. And I was like, what's my grandmother wearing? And they say a teal dress. I said, that's my mother. That's the dress we buried her in. So apparently my mother is always with me. Because she said in her old age, I was her crutch. Because my brother lived out of state. My sister lived out of state. My father died she lived 20 years longer than my father. And she always said I was her crutch. So every psychic that I know, when I talk to them, they always say my mother's still with me. And every now and then, like the cats will be sitting on the coffee tables and looking up in the corner behind me, watching something, looking at something. And sometimes I'll feel like somebody touched my head, like pat my head. And I just know it's my mom. I was like, okay, Mom, everything's okay. Don't worry about it. We're good. And but I've never seen her in a dream. I've never felt her actually, like felt her energy or heard it call me in Italian or anything like that. Stuff like that. But I've never seen her. I've never seen my father either, except for when he died that night when he came by to say goodbye. Have you ever experienced anything like that, Frank?
No.
In a dream? No.
I told you I'm psychic zero. Nothing like that.
I think you believe. I think you have your father in you, where you don't believe that said. But I think if you believe like your mother, I think your abilities would be there also. Because
I do believe everything I read about these things. If you can train yourself to have these abilities. Everyone has that opportunity to do it, but you have to train yourself. People are born with it. They're the lucky ones that don't have to bring it out on themselves. But we all have that ability. You just have to work on it to bring it out. I don't know. First of all, I don't have the patience. I don't know what to do. But I'm involved in so many other things now. I don't look into that. Yeah.
I got you. Well, your brother can help you out there. He did it to me, and I've had so much crazy stuff since he taught me.
Don't blame it on me.
I
That's
got
you who
little
goes into
things running across my chest in the middle of the
Oh
night.
my God! Yeah, he told me about that.
Yeah, I gotta
Jesus.
send Frank a picture of that thing you showed me.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So before we move on to the UFO, I want people we're going to have questions here in a little bit. We're already at over the hour mark, and we'll have some questions here in a couple more minutes. Do you guys have anything else you want to touch on before we get to the UFO story?
Two
Or?
more things, Chris. Frank, tell them about Florence's story, and then about your friend with the cannonball, because they both are the same thing, more or less.
I think Chris, I did mention it on the other one on our other
think
show,
you
but I
did.
could tell it again about the cannonball one.
Yeah,
but
and then go into Florence's story.
I'll go to Florence. Yeah, I'll go to Florence. We used to have a neighbor that lived in the next building. Her name was Florence, and Florence and Bill. They were very, very good friends of my aunt Adrian, who lived in same. We all lived in the same area, so they lived in the building next to us. And the story goes is that my uncle my Aunt Adrian's husband was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease. And every once in a while, Florence would come over to see how he was doing, how he was feeling. And she would bring things over to my aunt, some cookies or whatever, some pasta, whatever she had. And she would talk to him about it. So this one particular day, she came over and she asked how his name was Guy. How's Guy doing? And my aunt said he's doing very bad. I don't think he has much time in this life. So she says, I'm sorry to hear that. So she says, well, look, do you need anything at the store? I'm going to go to the store now. I can bring out something back for you. She goes, no, I'm fine. So Florence said goodbye, and she was heading down the steps. And this older gentleman was coming up the steps. And he asked her in Italian, because she spoke Italian, because he was an older gentleman with Italian, and asked her, which house has the children? And, which apartment has the children? And the only one who had children in that apartment building was my aunt. It was my cousin Roland and my cousin Yvonne. That was the only children. And she says, "Was the house over the apartment on the top floor on your right?" He goes, "Thank you so much." And so she goes up to there, and he's heading up the stairs. She's heading out the steps. Well, as it goes, that night, my Uncle Guy died. He had died. And so after a couple of weeks, they got together. Florence came over to the house again and said to her, oh, no, I'm sorry. On the way back from the store, after shopping, she went back up the stairs and asked my aunt, who was that guy that I met down the steps? He wanted to come to your apartment to see the kids. And my aunt said, nobody came here. No one was here. She goes, yeah, I met him at the steps. She goes, no, nobody came here. So she goes, oh, okay, maybe he went to the other apartment. So they forgot about that. But a couple of weeks went by, and then my aunt was putting away a lot of old photographs. And she, Florence came in and says, oh, I could help you. So she was helping my aunt take, photographs, wrapping them in paper, put them away somewhere. And they came across this one photograph. And Florence goes, hey, wait a minute. That's the guy. This is the guy I met at the steps. My aunt says, no. She goes, yeah. She goes, this is the guy I met on the steps. And she goes, can't be. He says, that's Guy's father. And he lives in Naples. She goes, I met him on the steps. I'm telling you, because he's dead. He died a long time ago. So I don't know. I'm sorry. No, I'm taking it back. No, he didn't die. He was alive. I'm sorry. He was alive. I'm getting confused with some other ones. He was alive. Guy had died, but the father came to visit. But the father wasn't dead. He was in Naples. He was alive in Naples. So the only thing I could figure was some kind of astral projection that he made himself come to his son's side before he died. So, but she would swore right to the last time I seen Florence. She says, I know that's the guy I met on the steps.
Frank,
But
Frank, did Gaetano's father ever meet the grandchildren?
No,
No.
he
That's
didn't.
what he was coming to see him. Okay.
No. But I was kind of surprised that he said he'd come to see the children
Kids,
and
yeah.
not Guy who was dying.
Yeah.
That's what threw me off a little bit. But
Yeah.
I guess seeing the children and seeing Guy would have been the same.
But he
Same
astral
thing.
project from Naples,
Yeah.
Italy to Yonkers, New York.
Yep.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now tell him about your buddy from work with the cannonball.
Answer. Okay.
Yeah, that was a great story.
All right.
Yeah.
The word got around at work that I was a parapsychologist, right? And they would ask me a lot of different crazy questions and things, and so we got one guy I was really, really good friends with. He was from Trinidad, the island of Trinidad, and we became very good friends. We were fishing together. We go crabbing together. We did a lot of things together. He's a very good friend. And then I don't know. I was reading something about voodoo or things like that. I think something to do about voodoo. And I used to call him Doc. I always call him Doc because he would look like a doctor. He's always dressed nice and neat and everything. I said, Doc, I says, look, I says, do you do this stuff on your island? Do you do? He goes, no, we don't do voodoo. He says, that's Haiti. We don't do that. We don't do that on our island. I said, do you have any kind of stuff like that on your island? He says, oh yeah. He says, but we don't call it anything. We don't call it anything. I says, well, what do you do? He says, Well, he says, I could tell you, he says that my dad, his father, was a shaman. And he was noted on the island of Trinidad as one of the best shamans, you know, very strong, powerful. He would put curses on people, take curses off of people. He would do all kinds of crazy things, heal people from some diseases and things like that. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He says, no. He says, my dad was a very famous shaman. I said, wow, that's something else. He says, how about you? He used an example. I meant it's in my book. The example he said that when he was like 7 or 8 years old, he was with his father and they were in the village buying some groceries, and this guy who was known as the town bully come driving by, and he would always cause trouble, start fights with people and things like that nature. And then he almost ran over a little girl with his car, and Doc's father got mad. He says, my father got real mad at the guy and told him, get out of the car. And the guy wouldn't get out. So his father, I don't know what he did, some kind of movement with his arms or something. And he just drew the guy right out of his car. Door went flying open. The guy came flying out of his car. And he's laying on this ground. This is this big bully now, right? And he says, I want you out of this town. I want you out of this village. And he did something again with his hand. And the guy actually, on his all fours, crawled right out of the whole street, and left his car there. And he said that stood in Doc's mind all the time, how powerful his father was with this. I forgot. He did tell me the name of the type of worship they do on that stuff, but I forgot the name what it was. But anyway, he says that's what he did. So in the meantime, I said, Doc, I said, do you have any of those powers? He goes, well, he says, I could do some things, not like my father. He says, but I could do some things. I said, well, what can you do? He says, let me see. He says, how about I visit you tonight? What do you mean you're going to visit me? He says, I'll come to your house tonight and I'll visit you and I'll tell you exactly what you're doing. I started laughing. Sure, you come, just ring the bell and I'll let you. He says, no. He says, you don't have to ring the bell. I'll just come to your house. So I laughed and, we went back to work, do what we had to do at work. And then on the way out, I said, Doc, I'll see you tonight, laughing as a joke. I said, I'll see you tonight. He says, I see you. That's it. We went. It was a Monday night. So it was about 9 o'clock. My wife had gone to bed. She was tired. And I was watching the Monday night football game, right? And nothing that was unusual. It was just watching Monday night football game. It was good. It was a good game. I think the Giants won that night, so I was happy about it. And the next morning, I get to work a little earlier, and I go into the employees' lounge, have my coffee, and Doc comes in early too. And I says, hey, how come you didn't show up last night? I said, I was ready for you. Because I was there. I said, what do you mean you were there? He says, I was there. I said, yeah, right. I said, prove it. He says, I came over. He says, I said, well, how'd you get here? First of all, how'd you get here? I didn't see your car or anything. How'd you get here? He says, I just went there. He says, I just get out of my body and I go there. What do you mean? I says, you get out of your body. He goes, I just sit in my lounge chair and I think. He says, I think hard and I pray and I go out. I go out of my body. I says, you came from Brooklyn all the way to Norwalk, Connecticut, out of your body. He says, yeah. He says, I came right out of your body and I came to your house. I said, well, how do you know it was my house? He says, I saw your truck. He says, I saw your truck in the driveway. He said, I know your truck. He said, I knew it was your house. He says, I could go wherever I want. As long as I put my mind to it, I could go to exactly where I want. All right, so what was I doing? He says, you were sitting on your couch and you were watching the football game. I said, anybody could say that. Monday night football, most guys watch Monday night football. Said, yeah, right. He goes, no. He says, no. He says, you have two couches. He says, which is strange. You have two couches. And he says, one faces the radiator, which I don't know why you have it like that. And he said, the other one was facing the TV. He says, okay. He goes, and plus, he says, it was halftime. He says, he called it intermission. It was intermission at the football game. And he says, and you got up and you went and got a beer. That's when I used to drink beer. So I says, yeah. I says, okay. What else? He says, He says, and then came back and you still watched the football game. He says, your wife was sleeping in the bed next, in the room next to you, in the bed next to you, the room next to you. He says, and he says, your setup, he says, when you come out of your, your living room, you have this little room, which we did. We have like a little pantry room where we keep our linen at that house. He says, then you go down the steps. He says, and then you go out. He says, and he says, it's funny how you have two landings. He says, you got a door on the outside and a door on the inside. You got two doors. And I says, yeah, okay. I says, how the hell did he know this stuff? I says, I'm really amazed. I says, Doc, you hit my house. You really did. And he says, and one other thing, he says, I bet you didn't notice. He says, one other thing that I put there just so you'd see that I was there. I said, well, what did you do? He says, didn't you see anything different when you came out this morning? I says, no, not good. I came down. He says, when you came down the steps, what did you just see? What didn't you see when you came down the steps? The cannonball. I says, yeah, there was a cannonball. The guy who had owned this house years and years ago had brought a cannonball back from the Civil War. Don't ask me why, but he brought it back there, and it was at the bottom of my steps, at the porch steps. I says, yeah, the cannonball was missing. He says, when you go home tonight, look on the front porch. I put it there. And I went home that night, and sure as hell, the cannonball was on the front porch.
Ain't that crazy, bro?
And ever since then, I always said, Doc, you're incredible. I said, you're incredible.
That's wild stuff, man.
He's nuts. That Doc was great. I wish I could kept in touch with him. He's a real good guy, a real nice person. Yep, that was Doc.
All right, fellas. Well, that was a good one too.
They were all good ones.
That Doc was incredible. I'll tell you.
But nothing goes on with you, Frank.
Nothing goes on with me though.
No.
Wait, I take it back. I did see a UFO.
Yeah.
I could say that I did see a UFO when I was visiting my grandfather in Italy. I did see a UFO up in the town called Bolzano in the Alps. At first, I thought it was a meteor. I was with my cousin. We were riding bikes. He belongs to a bicycle racing team, and he would go out for practice runs. Well, I went with him with a bunch of him and his friends. We went for a practice run with him, and of course, I'm always way behind. As we get to the top of the mountain, they're there waiting for me to catch up. So I pull over next to him, and I heard a guy yell out in Italian, disco volante. And in Italian, that means flying saucer. So I turned and I looked, and sure as hell, there was something in the air. But to me, it looked like a meteor because it had like sparks coming at the end of it, right? So it was coming down. It was if you held a dime at an arm's length, that's about the size it was. It was about if you held a dime at arm's length. So it was, I said, oh, the shit, this meteor is going to crash right into the town because it was coming down. But it was kind of slow. I noticed that it was really slow. Meteors I would think would go fast, but it was going real slow. I said, holy shit, this thing's going to crash into the town. As I got about quarter way down the mountain, it stopped, and it went right around the mountain. Now, going around this mountain is at least a 20-kilometer ride by bike because we've done it. I've done it with my cousin there in Italy. That was one of his practice runs going around that mountain. That thing went around that mountain in a split second, and it shot up in the sky. And I said, wow, that wasn't no meteor. But I couldn't tell you what it was, though. I couldn't tell you. But many years later, I went to look it up. I'll get into the internet was available finally. So I got onto the internet and I went to all different newspapers in that part of Italy because I knew when it was. It was in July of 1960 that I was there. And so I put in all that information, went to the newspapers. I couldn't find anything, nothing at all. I said, damn, I got to find out somewhere. And then where as it might be, a guy from the UK, the United Kingdom, had sent me something about UFOs, and he asked me for my opinion on it. And then he says, I saw that you were in Italy. He says, you had mentioned your UFO experience when you were in Italy in 1960. He says, you must have saw the UFO that was seen all over Europe. What do you mean? He says, and he talked back to me. He says, yeah, there was a UFO seen I forgot what day in July in 1960 that went It was tracked from Greece all the way through Italy, through Europe to the United Kingdom. So that was the only way I was able to find out anything about that UFO. So I wasn't the only one. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it. In fact, the next day in the newspaper, the city's newspaper, that was the big headline. It says, UFO travels over Bolzano, over the town. That was the big headline, all the paper. That was the only strange thing other than the Ouija board and the cabinets flying. But that was a UFO experience, yeah.
And the guy walking up the stairs. And...
Well, that wasn't me. I wasn't there when that happened. No, I wasn't.
But you guys before we go, we're already at the mark here, and
Okay.
You guys had an experience like UFO in different towns, right? And called each other on the phone. Is that correct? Or?
Good, Al. It's your story. It's really your story.
No, you started off, and then I'll finish it up.
Okay. It was in Bridgeport. In Bridgeport, we were living in Bridgeport, and I was painting Al's rooms up in the attic. I was painting his rooms, and I used to listen to this radio show. And all of a sudden, the guy on the radio show stopped talking about politics, and somebody who was listening to the radio show called him and said, "Hey, look out your window. There's a giant UFO on Main Street in Bridgeport." I said, "What?" And so this guy, his name was Tiny Markle. It was on WICC radio in Bridgeport. He said, "Folks, give me a minute. I'm going to go look out the window and see what this guy's talking about." So we waited. Everybody's waiting on, for this guy to come back to the radio. And he comes back and says, "You won't believe it." He says, "This thing is as big as it's taking up 3 streets. It's as big as anything. It's going up Main Street." I said, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, it's a UFO. It's going up Main Street." So I hear that. I'm only like a mile away from there, from when this is happening, right? I throw the paintbrush down, everything down. I grab my camera, my recorder. I jump in my truck. I just drive up to trying to hear where this thing is. And I'm trying to follow it on the radio. And so far, I'm doing it good. I'm following it. And all of a sudden, it makes a sharp left, and it goes towards Fairfield, Connecticut. It doesn't stay in Bridgeport, so it goes towards Fairfield. I says, "Oh, man." So I went to a red light. No, thank God there was nobody around. Went to a red light, tried to catch up to it. And then all of a sudden I hear that, hey, it's past Fairfield. It's heading towards, in fact, no, what the hell, what's that town? Not Westport. What's the town before Fairfield? No, I'm sorry. I'm all screwed up. What is it? Wasn't Fairfield. Yeah, it was Fairfield. It was heading towards Fairfield. And I lost it. And then I had my camera, I had my binoculars, I had everything. I was ready to take these pictures and see a UFO for the first time, real close up. I don't see anything, right? I got pissed off. I get back in my car, my truck. I get back home, and I just continue painting. Then I hear the door slam downstairs, and I have Alfred running up the steps. Boom, 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 boom. He says, "Frank, you won't believe what I saw." I said, "You've seen the UFO?" He goes, "Yeah, how did you know?" I says, "I was listening to it on the radio." Then that's where Al could pick it up, the rest of the story there. He could tell you what happened when he saw the UFO.
So I'm cruising up the Parkway. I got a brand new car, and I'm listening to the Yankee game, and the car starts puttering out on me, and I'm like, "Oh man, this car's gonna die on the Parkway." And I got off the Parkway, and I was on the grass, but I was up on top of a hill. So when I got out of the car, because I was going to get a car, look at the engine and see what was going on. When I got out, I noticed the Parkway was a parking lot. So I said, "What the hell's going on down there?" And I seen a state trooper. So I walked down to the state trooper and I said, "What happened?" I thought maybe there was a motorcycle accident because the traffic was stopped on both sides, And the cop says, "Look up." And I go, "What do you mean look up?" He goes, "Look up." And I look up, and there above the Parkway is this mother craft. It looks like the Roman Colosseum. It's taken up both sides of the Parkway, and there's no wind, there's no noise, there's no nothing. It's just stillness is in the air. All the cars are dead from this UFO. That's what killed my car. And I look up at it and I look at the cop and I go, "What do you think it is?" And he goes, what are you, an asshole? He goes, it's a UFO. And I go, yeah, it's a UFO. And I'm like, I'm looking inside the arches to see if there's anybody looking back out at us. People are out of their cars looking up, but no one's running around like a chicken without a head. And the cop's playing with his radio, trying to call, his office. And the thing is just parked there, like it just pulled up and threw itself in park. And it's just sitting there. And it's amazing. I'm trying to count the levels to see how high it goes, And all of a sudden, it does like a little pop. It pops up like 1,000 feet. It just bounces up. And once it bounced up, all the cars started back up. And the cop's radio started working. So the cop calls in dispatch and says, hey, listen, we got a UFO over the Merritt Parkway between these two exits in Fairfield. Could you dispatch the Air National Guard out of the Bridgeport Airport? So he said, okay, we'll dispatch the Air National Guard. So they dispatched the Air National Guard out of Bridgeport Airport. And the cop at the dispatch hooked him up with the lead plane, the lead pilot. And the lead pilot, and I'm standing there, I'm eavesdropping the conversation. I want to hear what they're talking about. And the lead pilot is like saying, listen, I got like 20 miles worth of visibility. It's a beautiful, summer night. And he goes, I got 20 miles. I don't see anything. I don't see anything in front of me. I don't see anything on the radar. And the cop says, just keep coming. It says, it's taking up both sides of the parkway. You can't miss it. And the lead pilot said, okay, we'll be there in like 2 minutes. And as soon as he said that mothercraft shot straight up into the sky in a blink of an eye. It was the size of a star. That's how high it went in a blink of an eye. It was just unbelievable how fast this thing went. And then these two jets come roaring down the parkway, really, really low, just barely above the trees. The trees are bending over, leaves are flying everywhere, the ground is shaking. Felt like the end of the world. I was more scared when the jet fighters came down the parkway than I was when the UFO was there. And then they turned around and they went back up the parkway, back to Bridgeport Airport, and they never seen anything. And I jumped in the car because the car started, and I couldn't get home fast enough to tell him. I was like, he's not gonna believe what I see tonight, And that's how the story goes.
Yeah.
Cool story.
Yeah.
Oh, we are at the end of the line here, fellas. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. But before we go, I would like to play everybody one of the vocals that I've recently captured and we've recently put out, and this is what we believe that is a Sasquatch singing. I don't believe Frank has heard it yet, so I wanted to play it for Frank. If I can pull it up here. All right. Before we go, I want to just get you guys' opinion here.
85, Diane. 84, 85.
All right, here we go. Here we go, everybody. Wait, hold on. I got to rewind it. Here we go. And that was it.
Wow, that was wild.
So, Chris, where was this? Where did you get this?
Northwest Connecticut.
Okay, you were during the day, night.
Nighttime. We left the recorder in a tree. We were up there. We had drones thrown at us and a couple knocks at us, and got cold that night. It was like 40 in August, so we left the recorders in the tree, and about an hour after we left, we captured all that
Oh,
stuff.
that was in August?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That is strange, yeah. Right.
But
And
you guys got any questions for the Santariga brothers here before we go? Did you already answer Diane's right about the year out?
Yeah, I already answered Diane's. Yeah.
Again, it's great. I love having you guys on. You guys are a wealth of knowledge and got a lot of cool
Well, yeah,
stuff.
like I said, the stuff we discussed tonight is not typical stuff that we talk about. So, it's never really been out there. It's like a lot of personal family stuff that, we keep close to the vest, So I thought it would be good that, we could bounce back and forth and talk about something new that someone, no one's ever heard before.
Right. No, it's awesome. That werewolf thing is really got me. That's a great story.
yeah, and if you could only saw that guy's face when he was telling me, you could see that he was relating it right back to when he was 12. Amazing. Yeah.
He was
All right. Well, you guys just hang out backstage, and I'll be right back. I'm just gonna say goodnight to everybody, and then I'll say goodnight.
Okay.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, Frank and Al, the Santariga brothers. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being in the chat. Thank you for being cool in the chat. And next week we have Buddy and Marvel and MK and Carl Sup, everybody back again. And we are going to go back into the Cells property in Texas. And we're going to get into the high strangeness there next week too. We're going to get into the letters that were left. And once the names started popping up, and there's a whole nother section to that. So that'll be next week. I think that's all I got for tonight. So thank you again for being so kind and in the chat. And as always, as my friend Larry says, get in the woods, people.